Live from Washington, D.C., Civic Network Television brings you Mobilizing Community Assets. And now, our moderator, Ramona Edelin.
Welcome to Civic Network Television's first course in the 1995 Building Community curriculum. Tonight, we begin Mobilizing Community Assets, taught by Professors Jody Kretzmann and John McKnight. Many of you are familiar with their book, Building Communities from the Inside Out, and the innovative strategies they have developed. Those strategies and their reputations as outstanding community organizers and teachers have made them much in demand. But now it's time to begin Program 1, Changing the Way We Think About Communities. It's a pleasure for me to introduce our faculty, Professors Jody Kretzmann and John McKnight. Both are associated with the Center for Urban Affairs and Policy Research at Northwestern University, where Jody is director of the Neighborhood Innovations Network and John is director of Community Studies. Joining us in the studio and participating in the training are business, neighborhood, and civic leaders representing a cross-section of citizens from Washington, D.C. And now, let's turn to our distinguished faculty to begin Module 1, From Needs to Assets. John and Jody, please tell us a little more about the experience you bring to this work.
Ramona, thank you very much. I know that Jody and I are both very excited about this opportunity to share the work we've done. Although it isn't really the work we've done, what we've done is collected information about how local communities solve problems. And we've done that from the Center for Urban Affairs at Northwestern University for a good many years now. We think we've been doing something that most universities don't do, and that is we have been trying to understand how local citizens solve problems. You know, a lot of universities study the problems they think communities create. But when it comes down to it, the fact of the matter is that communities are the great problem solvers of this society. And it isn't here in Washington that the great problem solutions are. It is among citizens in communities. And we have learned for 25 years at the Center for Urban Affairs how local citizens do that kind of work. Now, Jody and I both have feet in two camps. We both have spent a lot of our lives as community organizers. I started out as a neighborhood organizer in Chicago and did a lot of work with civil rights organizations in the 60s. And from the university now, we've been able to continue our contact with the leaders of local communities and keep track of those initiatives, to learn from them and hopefully to relate to them. Jody, I know you have a foot in both camps as I have.
I think that's right, John. I think probably the most important thing for people to know about us as we start this discussion that we're going to be having tonight and then 2 nights coming up is that really probably our hearts are still in communities on the west and south side of Chicago, a little bit more than they are in universities. I mean, I think when we think about who our best teachers have been, we're more likely to begin naming people in neighborhoods across the United States who have taught us. And so we have both done organizing. We've both thought a lot about and done a lot in the community development world. And we've thought a little bit about the policies at the city level and state and federal level, and from the point of view of funders and other kinds of helpers that might, in fact, help communities build from the inside out. So that's what we bring. We bring this foot in both camps, and we're trying to think with our colleagues in communities across the United States about what it is that it takes as we go into the 21st century to build strong and healthy communities. Now let me say a word about the work which underlines our immediate set of discussions, so you know what it is that we're coming before you to sort of report, because that's really what we are tonight. We're reporters for you all and for folks that we hope will join in our discussion across the country. We're reporters from a kind of odyssey that we've been on for the last now 5 years or so. We got a little bit of money, John and I and a few colleagues at the Center for Urban Affairs, to take off across the country and to spend time in communities across the country, mostly in cities, but in some smaller communities and rural areas as well. And the communities we were looking at were usually the most devastated, the most challenged communities in those cities. So we've spent a lot of time in places like the South Bronx, places like Roxbury in Boston, South and West Side of Chicago, East Side of Detroit, South Central Los Angeles. And we've built a lot of relationships with community folks in those neighborhoods. What we're after in those communities, though, is something that I think academics go after all too rarely. We ask people to tell stories, to tell their own stories, but to tell a particular kind of story. We were after stories about what works. What is it that in the face of real challenges, what succeeds? And we defined success fairly loosely. We said, tell us the stories that make you think that you could have a successful son or daughter or a successful grandchild, and you could imagine that grandchild living here in this neighborhood, the South Bronx or South Central Los Angeles. So we were after stories that didn't mean success means we leave, right? We were after stories that said success, yes, but it means we can stay and we can imagine a future for this neighborhood. And we've collected hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of those success stories from across the United States. And it's that treasure trove, if you will, of successful community building efforts